I don't know if I want to start us off. It's one of those days where you go,
Okay.
you can't read that.
Hello, Jim. I think you could just use the "I don't know if I want to start us off" as the start of this podcast. That's fine.
That's
I'm not
pretty
going to
much it. I
complain.
think that's where we're gonna kick things off. So so we were just talking about this. I think that it's a good place to. It's a good jumping point. Oh geez, my cord is wrapped around the wheel of my chair. My my cord
Maybe
is
we
this
should have
long.
spent like
This
2 more minutes setting up.
the, the cord is this long, right? And I was using it to do
Nobody's
some
going to
bumper
believe that this
cracking.
is episode 201. Like,
Uh, I know, right? So
it's episode 201. Big success. We made
yay!
it.
And you know
This is
what?
officially the start of season 3 because we're doing 100 episode cycles.
So
Nothing's going to change. We're
we're
just going to
getting
keep
more
steamrolling.
views. Yep, we're gonna keep doing it, but we're getting more views slowly but surely. We're growing our audience, and slowly but surely, we're getting more questions. We've got a listener question tonight. I'm gonna do later, but the first thing I want to talk about is oh come on. So I want to preface this by first saying that I think Rick Beato is talented. And nobody can question the fact, okay, that Rick Beato does prefer Gibsons. Okay, those are two things I want to preface this with. Okay, before I go on to say why what is there is wrong. Um, and I want to say that I've listened to his and watched his show, his um, YouTube channel. I can't tell you how many times. So I don't want to sit here and go and have people go, "Oh yeah, Jim's Captain Negative," because that's not what I'm doing. I just want to ask the people at Gibson Marketing what they thought when they said, "You know what? We got Les Paul and we need another Les Paul and Dorsey. Let's have it be Rick Beato." Because to be honest, I mean, I understand his reach. I get that. I get the I really like Rick Beato, uh, his brand of Axe hard. I don't know his brand of Axe body spray. I don't know, but I do know
That
this.
sounds like a lifestyle product Gibson would put out.
Yeah, well, no, what I'm saying is though, come on, you cannot tell me not
Gibson's new brand of body spray
yeah
will be called
yeah.
Nitro.
It'll be called Beato.
Nitro.
Your hair will never be less gray. Um,
Oh my god.
Hey, Rick, you know we love you. We do. We really do.
Yeah, we
And
both
so,
listen to his show. I mean,
yeah, we're both
occasionally.
fans. All right.
I'm not a big. I'm
I
not a big follower, but
I'm
you
not
know,
a big follower, but I do own his stuff. I own the Beato book. I own So, um, what I'm trying to say here is this though, that I don't wake up in the morning and go, I wonder what Rick Beato plays for a guitar, and I should play one. That's what I'm getting at.
yeah, and well, it's not just that. Like, this is like giving. I'm trying to think of somebody like completely out of left field. Let's do this. This is like giving Barack Obama a signature guitar. Like
Yeah.
nobody identifies Rick Beato with guitar playing. They identify him with being a producer or an engineer and that kind of thing based on his channels. So this whole idea that Rick Beato should now be, getting a Gibson signature guitar and selling to guitar players just seems psycho to me.
Well,
Like this is like lifestyle brand kind of stuff.
right,
Where it's like, well, we want to identify with this guy.
right,
And
now if you watch his channel, he does play and he does play well and all that stuff. I'm not beating on that. What I get at is he also plays. He plays um, Dan Electro. He plays Fender. He plays.
yeah, I don't think
plays
I
some
don't think
wacky stuff.
I don't think Gibson wants to be the brand that Fender is right now, which is you can't play anything else but our instruments on stage. Like
Yeah.
that has been a thing, and I don't know how it is in the lower echelon of Fender artists because I don't really follow a lot of them, but Fender has been kind of brutal to some of their artists, and
Yeah.
we've talked about it on the show before, but like, you got to play Fender electrics, and then if they really get ticked, they can ask you to play Fender acoustics, and that has caused some very notable names to walk
Oh,
and go to places like PRS.
I got to tell you,
Um,
because a Fender acoustic, I have never, not once, have I played a Fender acoustic and went, "Wow, that's good tone."
um,
I'm not saying it
so
doesn't exist. Just
well,
saying I haven't found one.
what I'm setting up here is that Gibson is taking more the PRS route with their artist program now, which is PRS sells artist guitars, right? They don't expect anyone to use just their guitars.
Right,
And you can see that some of the artists they've signed don't use just their guitars.
right,
And that's fine. Like I don't realize or I don't really see any problem with that. And I think most people say that that's more genuine
yeah,
is if somebody has a PRS model, but then for these other 3 songs they use these other guitars, like that's not a
right,
big problem.
right. And if you watch Gibson TV and you watch Mark Agnesi's shows where he'll go through, it's kind of like that TV show where people would do, was Cribs? Was it called Cribs?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
they would go through and they'd look at their TVs and their cars and everything else. Well, they've got a similar show where they go through and yeah, the first few guitars, they figure, okay, if you're going to watch for the first 10, 15 minutes, you're going to watch Gibsons. But after that, they'll pull out a Telecaster, they'll pull out a Stratocaster, they'll pull out some weird thing they've been playing. So maybe maybe the fact that Rick doesn't just play Gibsons is okay, but I still don't associate Rick Beato
No, that's
as
the
a guitar
problem.
player. As a YouTube celebrity, yes, but no
Yeah,
more than
that's
I do Phil McKnight. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I wonder what Phil McKnight plays. 'Cause I don't care. I don't care. Not because Phil McKnight's a bad guy or that his
yeah, I mean
channel
like
isn't.
it's not you don't
I don't
it's just not important.
I don't think
And
of what's my and it comes to the question you asked me earlier this week. When I said I wanted to look at a Telecaster, you said,
that's not what you said. You said which one should I go
"Yeah,
buy? And I
which one should
said,
I get?" Right.
"Ah!"
That's right. And you shot me off the ledge, or pulled me off the ledge, or spoke
No,
my
I
kind of
shot you
radio into me.
down. I did. I
You,
shot you. It
yeah,
was
you took me down. And the truth is, it was true because he asked me a very simple question, and it was a one sentence question. Who's your
yeah,
favorite Telecaster player?
yeah. Because
I don't have one
I mean,
other than Brad Paisley.
yeah, but I mean, like the
I don't
point
know.
was that you're not in that genre,
No,
right? So
that's
like
what I'm saying.
for me, it was a very simple answer to your query, which is that unless you have a specific sound in your head you're after, you don't need one.
Right.
Um, no one needs anything except
No.
for like one instrument or two instruments, you know.
Yep.
And in that case, now we're getting into the specifics of an instrument, which makes it even more complicated. But
Right.
um,
But
as
but
far as
but I'll
Beato's concerned, like this whole thing is just
yeah, well it would be
it's
like
like
if
it's about like when they signed Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains as an artist guy, when everybody knows that he's been partial to GNL for like
he's
what
been right.
20 years.
When you think
I mean,
about right, when you think about Cantrell, and I got to give him credit. Okay, let me give Gibson credit on the same side as saying I don't think it was a good idea. I'll give him credit. Jerry Cantrell was during the interview that Gibson gave him on their very channel. There's a great interview with Cantrell on Gibson TV.
yep,
It's over an hour long. I'm going to say it's close to 2 hours, might even be more. But anyway, Cantrell goes on, and one of the things that he says about his guitars is that his G&L is on every freaking song, every album that G&L is on there. And he doesn't
yeah.
say and my Gibson this or and my
Oh,
he doesn't even give them an honorable mention when it comes to that time frame. He
right.
does mention how much he loved Gibsons in the beginning, which a lot of us do. Okay, so you give him that, and he enjoys his Gibsons now, but there's a huge spot in the Cantrell library, and we'll talk about another artist that they say may be going to Gibson here shortly. That there was a rumor on Trogley's guitar show that had this, um, but and he's a metal guy. But there's this huge Cantrell era where it's GNL. So I give Gibson props for giving him that position. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
but the funny part about his situation was they made him a brand ambassador.
right.
Like they didn't make him just a signed artist. They were like, no, this guy's going to represent the brand, even though he's representing this other brand. I'm like, what
He's
the hell is
he's
this
not going to
about?
quit playing his GNL. That would be
Right, right,
ridiculous, and it would be a signal to anyone if he stopped playing that GNL. It would be a signal that none of this is sincere.
right, right. And he's not going to do that. Gibson's not going to ask him to do that. Which I give him. Actually, their AR team over there. It sounds like they've done a complete 180 because we went from that period where people were literally walking out the door.
Yep.
And now it's like they flipped,
Now they're
and all
yeah
of a
they're
sudden
knocking on the door.
they're back to where they should be. But um, this whole artist relation thing just like it just kills me. So like Jared Dines getting his signature guitar and stuff, and I'm like, how is this even happening right now? Like, why are people looking at these people like? Listen. It goes back to that episode we did a couple weeks ago where we talked about the guitar companies propping up artists and like becoming sort of a label in and of themselves. And I kind of look at the situation and I said, this is the opposite of that, right? This is let's find people that already have huge market outreach and who really aren't actually a good fit for us, and let's sign him as an artist because we need their billboard.
Right. And that,
And that's what this is. It's nothing more than that.
well, I mean, yeah. So if you look at who Gibson has had on their show recently, like I said, they had. I mean, Bonamassa has always been there, and Bonamassa is another one. They
Bonamassa should
never.
have been a brand ambassador. He should have been the one that
Yes.
they were like, that guy's the brand ambassador.
But what's funny is they've never asked him to say, you know what? Can you play this Gibson a little bit more? I mean, maybe on the side they have, but the guy
Well,
plays just as much Fender as Gibson.
I
Um,
think that may be part of the reason why they didn't want him as a brand ambassador because it would have been too obvious.
yeah.
And so they go with Slash, who's like the consummate Les Paul guy,
Yep.
and then they get Jerry Cantrell to fill out the second spot, which is kind of funny. But maybe Bonamassa becomes one at some point. But I think that they
I,
also realize Bonamassa is going to do what Bonamassa does, and so if he makes the decision to sell all his Les Pauls and go to PRS, he's going to
yeah.
do it.
And
They're
he
not
will
going to
do.
stop him.
That's right. Bonamassa is going to do what Bonamassa wants to do, and they see him. They know. I mean, nothing negative in this statement. Bonamassa is a loose cannon. He does whatever he wants, and he's not going to take his. He's not going to let them tell him what to do in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But the next person that I heard, now this is still a rumor. He is leaving Dean. Is Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Dean's falling apart right now. That house of cards is collapsing fast. I mean, they lost Michelangelo Badio
Right. Just a
just
second.
recently, and then he
Yes.
went over to Amazon Guitars, basically. um,
Did that just get
and
delivered?
No. Oh, I just noticed it got delivered.
Huh?
Oh, I just noticed it got delivered.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
hey,
Ernie Ball. I got something from Ernie Ball. I
that
didn't
was
even know I
that's
had
great
anything.
timing. I was gonna
So-
say that's great timing.
So it's timing. I could do an unboxing on the show. So I don't know what it is. I literally don't know what this is. But
It's probably an Ernie Ball box, but it's probably a
no.
little white box of 16 ohms. No, it's a little small for that. I'll be damned. What the hell did they send you?
Yeah. I think I remember. It is timely in what we're talking about. So anyway, yeah, I think that Mustaine is doing the right thing. Go ahead. You were talking about.
Well,
the
if he
House of
flips, I
Cards.
mean, if he flips, Dean is falling apart over there though. Like they've been losing a lot of artists right and left. I don't think the company's doing so hot. I think like you can see some of those smaller builders are just getting their ass kicked right now. Dean is one of them. BC Rich is another one. Who because they had a sordid period in the '90s, and of course Dean really hasn't had success since Dean Zielinski was there. I mean that's the way that it's been talked about in my area, and they're a local company. The other company that actually it's kind of affectionately like the same thing as Washburn. Washburn's made some cool guitars over the years, but Washburn, I mean, the company itself, I knew somebody used to work there. They called them washboards. That's how they referred to their guitars. So, um, I just, I can't imagine people like Dave Mustaine, who's got so much writing on his endorsement, would stay with Dean. And if Gibson's looking, that would be a good fit for him. His love of V's. Maybe he'll play that Gibson V, the polymodern V or whatever, the modern
The
V.
Star Trek one.
Yeah, the Star Trek emblem.
I actually
He'll-
kind of
at
like
the
the
end of
look.
the show, he'll tap it and he'll say, "Beam me up."
Yeah, I don't think I'd buy one in any alternate universe. I just kind of like the look of it. I don't think it's gonna be. I know what this is now. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So speaking of Slash, I saw this online and paid a ridiculous amount of money, um, given what it is. But they never say they sent it. Every time I looked at my thing, it said that it was still processing. So I was actually surprised that it came.
It is a tin. It is a string tin.
It's a string tin. Ernie Ball signature strings slash
Do you use
11/48. Now you know me. I use 9/49.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, what the hell did you buy those for? I
And
mean,
it
I
does
could
it.
sling 11s on a Gibson, but
It is kind of it is a collector's thing. I'll probably leave it in the tin and never use them. So never open them. This thing is kind of 3D. I don't know if you can see that. This is kind of
it's
3D.
embossed. It's
And some,
embossed.
yeah, embossed. There's 3 packs like this. So
Can I
anybody,
just say Jim is the only person I know that would buy collector's strings?
oh no, that's not the worst of what I've done.
No,
So
I can only imagine.
yeah, so I ordered an item. You know about this.
Yep.
It's on the way. It's something you already have, so not anything out of the ordinary. But something that came up in the group. I got this.
Okay. Yeah,
Now,
and that makes sense.
yeah, this makes sense. Now, am I going to keep it? I don't even know if I'm going to take it out of the box. I may return it. I got it because I was thinking, okay, I have a TU3, but they say that this thing is like the ultimate. These are the ultimate in tuning precision.
I mean, the real advantage there is that it's a strobe tuner. It's a digital strobe, which means it's not really a strobe,
Right.
but it's. I mean, when the first Peterson strobes started coming out, people were like, "Oh yeah, that's what I want. This one." And I saw them on everybody's boards, and then it was like, "Okay, I'm over it." And when the TU3 came out with the strobe mode, and now the Polytune has strobe mode, it just kind of doesn't do anything for me. That said, the display on that is wonderful,
Is it?
and that would be the reason to keep it. If you have trouble seeing your TU3 on stage, that's a good alternative.
Yeah, that's the only thing that the TU2 used to be great, and the TU3, the only jump you have the Waza. The
They're
the
basically
only
the same. I had
yeah
both.
the only thing that the TU3 um, has or does, it's really just a new TU2. It's a TU2 with some underpinnings.
Yeah. Well, it has
TU2
the
had the
strobe
strobe,
mode.
right? And I've accidentally gone to the strobe mode before. The strobe mode on it is more difficult to control. I would imagine that one as large as this would be a little more easy to see.
I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with mine. I think if you're comfortable using a strobe tuner, I think it becomes a lot easier to navigate and use.
No, I just mean as far as seeing it. I'm old. My
Well,
eyesight
yeah,
isn't
we
great.
know this, Jim. I
This
mean, that's
this
clear.
eye is this eye is practically useless. I can open this eye and see just as easily, but I kind of look weird, so I open both eyes. But the truth is, this eye, it's a fuzzy mess. Everything I see is a fuzzy
Yeah, I
little
mean,
blur.
so that'll be a good purchase for you.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, I saw it and I was like, kind of wish I had one, but I've always wanted one of the Peterson strobe tuners because I always thought that because Peterson builds tuners, like that's what they do,
Yes.
that would produce a really good tuner unit, but it was funny because I saw the Strobo Stomp when it first came out was like on everybody's board, and then all at once it just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like Boss like signed up a bunch of people to use TU2s or whatever. It was just like people didn't see a real benefit to having that over a Boss TU2 or a TU3 or a Polytune or
Yeah, it's weird
um,
because I remember the Peterson strobe tuner coming out while I had my TU2, and I went, eh.
yeah, I think a lot of people probably actually had that reaction, but it was just weird because I know that, seeing pictures of people's boards and stuff, I was like, everybody's using one. What the hell? Especially the guys that had like 4 or 5 pedals, like that was all they used. They had one of those because they were like, I have to be totally in tune. Like that's
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they're,
Well,
they're the sticklers for it.
yeah, I have my reasons for having done what I did. Um, so let, I also bought because we've had one in the store forever. I bought the Telecaster cutting board because I figured if I don't have a Telecaster, the least I can do is cut meat on a board.
Oh my god!
It was actually cheaper than a cutting board at Walmart.
Did you already
for
own a cutting board?
I have a plastic one. I don't
Okay.
have a wooden one,
All right.
an
Well,
oil
the
wooden
wooden
one.
one's less sanitary than a plastic one.
I know.
Just
I
saying.
yeah. The fact is that I wanted one that I could oil and use for different things. But anyway, um, so the I've got a Captor X coming, as you know.
I don't know anything about that product.
Yeah, you don't know a damn thing. You're
Look
gonna
at the box
you do know
sitting
I'm gonna
over
be
there.
calling you like in the middle of the night. David,
Now,
how
won't
do
need
I do this?
you won't need to because it's not that hard.
Yeah,
Get
that's
the
what
app
I'm
on your
hoping.
phone. It's basically the same deal as the Spark. You get the app on your phone, you dial into it. Once you get familiar with the app, and it's going to take a little bit because there's a lot of stuff there. Once you get familiar with the app, you won't need to call me. You'll be like, just do this, and I'm done. I haven't tweaked mine in forever. I mean, I use the attenuator probably more than I use the direct out on it, but I'm going to be using the direct out more. I'm writing some music, and I actually got blisters on my fingers from playing parts that I've never played before, and doing things that I've never done before. But yeah, so I have the Captor back there. You got the 16 ohm version, so that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah.
Not,
Because the 16 ohm is better for the thing, because what I want to do is put it between the amp and the speaker on the Marshall.
can we talk about Mason Marangella for a minute?
Who?
Mason Marangella,
What's
the
that?
rig doctor,
Oh,
the guy that runs Vortex Effects.
yes.
So he did a countdown, and I watched it today, and I do watch his stuff, but I'm very skeptical because obviously he's got a history of doing things that are questionable. If you want to know more about that, ask me in the group. I'll clue you in on the things that we know have actually happened, and some of the other things that have been suggested may have happened. So anyway, he does his countdown of the 10 best products for pedal boards in 20 or not, well, he said 10 best rig products in 2020. And one of the things he brought up was the Sur Reactive Load IR. And his justification for this over something like the Captor was basically that the Sur Reactive Load IR is the only reactive load box right now that has a true reactive load in it. And I'm like, I just saw, I paused it when I heard this, and I just shook my head and I go, what are you on? Like, there are at least 3 products, including the Sur Reactive Load right now, that have reactive loads in them and do IRs. There's the Mesa Cab Clone IR Plus and IR, right? So that's arguably 2 products. There's the Cab Clone, or not the Cab Clone. That's what I was talking about. The Mesa Cab Clone. And there's the Captor X, which I have never heard anyone say what Mason said next, but I will get there in a second. And then there's the Sur Reactive Load Box IR, and I'm sure there's probably at least one other product I'm leaving out of this mix that does this.
Right.
And he goes on. I unpause after I kind of, did the, and he says, he says, the other products are some sort of hybrid IR or hybrid reactive load, that they have a resistor in the reactor portion of it, and that has any bearing on it whatsoever. And I
What?
just kind of shook my head, and I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he honestly, because number one, he provides no proof for the claim he just made, shooting down other products. There are other times he's made some pretty compelling arguments for things like going to soldered cables as opposed to solderless systems. Although I have my doubts on his, at least some of his comments about brands like George L's, which he poo-poos George L's and says that they don't sound good, and they're horribly unreliable. I tell you this right now, and I tell you as listeners, I have a local shop who builds boards for people all the time with George L cables. Basically, never heard of a failure from them, and I've asked. I had a board that I had for 5 years with more cables than you've probably seen, and it not a one failed. Now, granted, when I put them together, if I didn't put them together right, they didn't work to begin with. But the reality was, I figured that out real quick, and then they worked completely all the time. But my point is that Mason Marigella is making comments that he's not backing up. So, like, it'd be nice if he said this, and then he said, here's a picture of this load box on the inside, and right here is this, and this means it's a hybrid. Nobody said that. No one. And there are people taking this stuff apart and looking at the insides of it. And nobody is on the gear page right now screaming and crying and saying, the Captor X is a hybrid reactive load. Or that the Mesa Cab Clone IR, which is probably farmed out to Captor, or farmed out to Torpedo, or Two Notes, they're probably sitting there going, you're smoking dope. Like, what are you on? They're not hybrid reactive loads. There's no, like, and if they are, I can't tell the difference between the feel of the amp, between that and being plugged in. I can tell the difference between the sound, right? Obviously. But feel wise, it doesn't come plugged into my cab. You guys are all smoking dope if you think that matters that much. For a product that's $550 to be a non-reactive load or whatever. Now, there are other products like the H&K Red Box, which these aren't. This is why I got pissed, because I'm like, these aren't even IR based, so you can't compare these. Cab Clone, the Red Box, the Blue Box. Well, the Blue Box is IR based, but that has no load in it. That is a speaker through with an output.
Yep.
I just
and
God,
Two Notes
like,
does make one
on?
that I wonder if he's got his products mixed, because Two Notes does make an item that is, what is it, the Two Notes Torpedo. It's not the Captor. It's the one
Cab
where the one where you plug in your speaker out, and you still have to go to your load. You have to load that.
That's the Cab
Is
M.
that it? Yeah, that's it.
Cab M does both. And then, of course, they had the first Captor, which didn't have IRs in it.
Right.
Or if it did, it was only one IR.
Right.
I just, like, look, this is the same thing that we say with any time we hear some of the snake oil stuff come up. Pay attention and do your own due diligence before you buy something.
Right.
Don't let somebody like Mason Marigella decide for you on something like
I
this.
didn't know he was still doing videos.
Oh, dude, he's got like hundreds of Rig Doctor videos.
Huh. Okay.
And like, some of them have good information in them, or they'll clue you in. If you're a complete noob, like, you'll understand some things that you didn't understand before. Some of the other things that he does on his channel are like, this is all personal opinion. And like, there's the cable video, right? He talks about conversations with Bob Bradshaw and Pete Cornish and people like that. He's never had a conversation with either of those guys. Like, that's a bunch of crap.
He may not have. It would make sense that he would, given what his specification or his,
Both of those dudes are really reclusive, and I doubt they're sharing trade secrets with him. I mean, that's my skepticism there. It's like,
if his name was David Gilmour, he might have had a conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, I've met people who have had Bradshaw rigs, like, over the years, and or have had, Pete Cornish pedals or
Cornish.
that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's like a whole nother league of custom product,
right.
so nobody who's building boards is building custom
And
products.
that's in the
Like
league
that's not,
of
yeah.
Dumble when it comes
Well,
to Bradshaw and Cornish as far as
I
it,
think
it,
I think Bradshaw's like one tier under Dumble, but yeah, in the same ballpark.
what I
Um,
mean is that you don't just, you know what, today I'm gonna get you're not just a guitar player that plays in his house and, oh, you know what, today I'm gonna get a Cornish rig. I mean, you can, but you got to know somebody who can get a hold of somebody to
I think that he has probably
get one
met
used.
both of them in passing, or maybe had some phone conversations about rigs that he's working on for other people or that kind of thing. But I highly doubt that those guys are telling him, hey, you should use only soldered cables because that's what we do. And like we do it this special way and use epoxy to fill in the jack and all this other stuff. Like I have a feeling that kind of conversation doesn't go on with those dudes because that's how they make their money. I mean, there's still people that buy Bob Bradshaw rigs. You don't believe
Right,
me?
right.
Go on Huge Racks and take a look. I mean,
Yeah,
it's still a thing.
yeah.
So I just if you're putting together your first pedal board and you're going to Mason Marangella and you're watching the videos just to kind of idea what's going on, and then you're gonna do some research and you're actually gonna do it yourself, like, and do it really well. Yeah, there's a lot of good information there, and I actually think that like he's got some good opinions too. Like he talks about the Mesa Boogie buffer being one of the great buffers and stuff like that. But there are also things he says that are like, dude, take a lot of salt with what he's saying, because for most of us, especially, you know, you don't need tour grade. Like the vast majority of us don't probably need tour grade. We'd be fine with weekend warrior grade, which
I
is
I think that what happens with pedal boards, and I think we could take this in another direction, is that okay? I'm not sure how you looked at your first pedal board. So my first pedal board wasn't a board; it was just two pedals that had a wire between them,
yeah, with
and I
cables
had
between it.
yeah, and I had 9-volt batteries in both of them, and I had a couple of 9-volt batteries in my bag just in case they went out, right? So, and it was a TU2, and if I remember right, for a while, I know I had a chorus. I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
the
that old chorus that you got laying around.
CE3
You
or
showed
whatever it
me
was. Yeah, I've got an original or really
the
old '90s or late '80s Boss chorus, and that was pre TU2. And
yeah.
back then, I had a DS1 and a chorus. I didn't know which one to put where, and notably, my tone suffered as a result. But the next thing I had was a um that in the there was a dual uh what do you call it, a two level distortion pedal. It was, oh, the MXR double shot.
Okay, yeah,
Is
it was
that a
like that,
thing?
or like a Jekyll and Hyde, or something like
Yeah,
that. Because yeah, I mean
yeah.
that's
Jekyll and Hyde was the H2O or well, visual sound.
right.
Mine was definitely the double shot. And the guy that I played with had a board. Okay, his board was literally a board, and he had a sparkle drive of and his sparkle drive, I think Keeley was still doing mods back
He
then.
was doing the lab or something. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it was
you
somebody
didn't need
like,
to go out the Sparkle drive. That thing sounds great anyway. So
yeah, he actually had Keeley did a mod where he took a little bit of the sparkle off or something. I don't know. It might have not been Keeley. It might have been somebody else. Might have even been Wampler for all I know. I just remember he had it modded by somebody. So he had a modded sparkle drive, and he had uh, and this was in the days of everybody had to have modded stuff, right? This was
mm,
late '90s, early 2000s. Everybody was modding shit. And the other one that he had a TU2, and he had a third pedal. And so he had three pedals, and I was like, wow. And of course, a wah pedal.
you're
Always
like,
went, yeah.
yeah,
Everybody out with wahs. And so I said to him, I said, geez, how are you powering those? And he goes, oh yeah, there's this new thing. It's, and it wasn't called the one spot at the time. It was something else, and it was just a ganged power supply. But what I'm getting at is this: we gigged everywhere. I mean, we did a ton of gigs, and we were Southern rock meets pop type stuff. So we would go from being Leonard Skinner and Molly Hatchet to being I guess at the time it would have been Three Doors Down or something like
Yeah,
that.
whatever pop rock radio crap was out.
Yeah, whatever was most popular at the time. And so I was over there singing. I didn't think too much of it, and I never thought too much about the fact that my two pedals just sat on the ground and did their thing. And I kept wondering, and I did finally buy one of those little Boss things. And what's funny is I had three little dongles. It was probably more dangerous than any 9-volt battery I had because I had three little freaking 9 volts just sitting there tailing off. And if somebody dropped beer on the floor, it would have been fun. But it's just it makes me laugh because I didn't have a pedal go out. I hit the tuner to mute the sound, plug the other guitar in, and go. 9 times out of 10, I use the tuner to tune anything. I had already tuned up, at the beginning of the show, and maybe during the second break or something, if it was a cold night and it was near the door. Otherwise, I didn't care. And I think now to these people that are spending, and we're going to talk about another thing here in a minute. Another point I had written for tonight. I'm kind of dominating tonight as far as the stuff we're talking about, but
That's fine.
the pedal board, people are spending more on their pedal boards than they're willing to spend on some of their guitars. It's like I'm going to put. We've talked about this before with pedals, right? I mean, we talked about my pedals. If you
Yeah,
think about,
that's the actual pedals on the board. But I mean, like,
right,
there's people buying like I forget what the name of the company is, but they're in Germany. But they have the two-tiered pedal board with the
right,
cover, and they're like
yeah,
$700 or $800. They're buying those. They're buying the gig rig, which is $1,000, and then the gig rig
yeah.
power supply and all modular components. And you're like, before they're done and over with, before they even actually put any pedals on the board, they're $1,000 or $2,000 in the hole.
And then
It's
they're
just
running it
it's
into a
ridiculous.
Spider, a Line 6 Spider, and
Yeah, or even just whatever
and a
cheapo
Squire.
amp.
Yeah, or worse yet, I guess it's not too bad. Running it into a uh, like a Line 6 Helix or a, something like that, and then or a Line 6 what do you call it? The little one, and and then running that into the board, not even running it into one amp, and I'm like, what? And I mean, it's your money, spend it however you want. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's like so. Here's my takeaway from this. Then we can switch topics.
yeah,
When you have a board, like the board's function is to make your stuff portable. Number one.
yep,
Number two, to make your stuff reliable.
yep,
Which is number two, and to provide you with something you could just pull out and play with, and not have to like set up a bunch of cables and make sure all your settings are correct because you've been carrying them around in a milk crate or whatever. Um, and believe me, you all know you've done it. Um, so here's like the pedal thing, just kind of the whole pedal idea just kind of makes me laugh. The pedal board idea, when you have like your rig where you had 3 pedals, it's like just buy a couple extra patch cables. Like there's no that you. I mean, for the kind of gigs you were probably playing at the time,
yeah.
you didn't need a board for that. I mean, honestly, like you got 2 pedals, as long as you got power on the floor somewhere where you can actually plug into and you can protect the power cables, or you're going to run them with batteries. God forbid you run a rig on batteries now. I mean, they don't even make pedals with batteries in them anymore, or with
Yep,
battery
some
jacks
of
in them,
them.
or half the
Yeah.
time. I mean, I can't tell you. There was a pedal I bought recently where I was like, oh, I'll just open this up, put a battery in it, try it out. And I opened it up and I was like, are you effing kidding me? I have to have a power supply to try the pedal.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just dumb. So for a a 2 cent battery plug
Yep.
or a 7 cent battery plug. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just
It
ridiculous.
maximizing profits. It's ridiculous. Not that I think that batteries look the whole effect of batteries on the earth and all the other stuff. I get it. The 9-volt battery is a horrible thing. It doesn't last very long. They when they start to go, they're off at 8.6 volts, and then there's people that, oh, that's how I like my batteries. They drain them. It's
You see, this is a super heavy duty. You know what this is? This is a carbon zinc battery. This is what I use. I prefer these in my dry pedals when I want to use batteries. Which my Sunface is a battery only pedal.
Yep.
This is what it runs.
And that's what you use.
I buy 5 or 6 of them at a time at the dollar store, $5, and they're horrible on the environment. But when somebody figures out how to make one that isn't horrible on the environment, that makes my pedal sound good, I'm all in.
Yep.
Same thing with tubes. Part of the reason why tubes stopped getting made is because they were bad on the environment.
Yep. Those gases and that stuff they put in the tubes aren't exactly great. So moving to the next thing, talking about pedal boards, so I saw a video today where. Actually, a few videos. We should talk about the video you told me about, though. We should talk about that because I just want to talk about first world problems.
Rhett Shull.
I
didn't know if I wanted to mention his name, but I do want to talk about him. Yeah,
right. I'll just call it out. I'll call it.
Let me start because I
found it.
I immediately unfollowed. Like it was that bad. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Rhett Shull posted a video about I forget what it, and I'm not gonna go look it up. I don't have the skill to do it, but basically said I'm burnt out. I'm burnt out.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, it's like I'm burnt out, which is total clickbait, right? Like this is nothing more than an ad for the projects he did last year that he's going to continue to do through the beginning of 2021 because ain't nobody working, right? So, and he goes on to talk about how it's just been a really hard year and not being able to play out in clubs and stuff has been really rough on him. And he's been having a tough time creatively, and like he needs to figure a situation out and move forward. And then he proceeds to talk about the live streaming project that he's done for the last 6 months, where he's charging admission and all the different stuff that's going on with regards to that, and how, basically this was my takeaway from it. 2 days before, he did a video talking about, whatever new product he had just been sent, right? And he's in his home studio that is like fully stocked pro level gear in there, and with his Dumble sitting next, his not his Dumble, but his Dumble clone sitting next to his $8,000 Dumble clone, and his $900. He was talking about his $900 Mercari fuzz, and I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, you are actually having a video where you're bitching and complaining about being burnt out in a world where other musicians who are being more sensible and trying to take care of themselves, and I'll make some comparisons between Rhett Shull and some other players before I give the floor to Jim. But you're actually going to pretend that your problem, that you're burnt out, is more significant than the fact that the rest of them can't eat, or that they literally cannot pay their bills right now. Like it was just so disingenuous. Like, go to hell. I looked at my wife. I explained the problem to her for a second, and I just turned around and I unfollowed. I was like, dude, there's just no point. Like, you're an asshole. If you think that for any reason that you should be above anyone else and their problems, I'm creatively burnt out. I got all this money. I got free stuff sent to my house I can put on eBay to pay the bills, but I'm going to pretend that woe is me because I'm creatively burnt out. Screw you. So here's a takeaway from this, right? So I've been watching other YouTube guitar players who are great guitar players, mind you, just like him. Which I don't think he's that great. I think he's a Black Keys clone myself. But looking at,
you did mention that.
Looking at some of the other players that are like on YouTube but are also real professional players, guys like Josh Smith, right? Josh Smith and Rhett Shull. Let's make this very clear. Josh Smith is probably what I would consider B-list, as in like he's not going to sell out stadiums, right? Neither is Rhett Shull. But Rhett Shull doesn't even have I don't think Rhett Shull has enough pull to actually tour as himself. I think he's a C-list or a D-list player, right? But here's the rub. How many $15,000, increments has Josh Smith spent on gear that isn't making him money? How many $15,000 increments has Brett spent that isn't making him money? And it's like, it's really wild to me because that he like the Mercari fuzz he bought. I've heard a wide range of how much he paid for that thing. I've heard everything from $800 up to $1,400. So, who knows? But that's for the Tone Bender Mark 1, I think he bought. And then of course he's got every freaking pedal. Like when you hear him do like, oh, I'm building a pedal board, and he shows his video, it's like he just starts pulling stuff out of a hat, and you're like, the hell is that? Like, where'd you get that from?
Yeah, I can't feel anything for these YouTubers, any of them. I don't care which one it is. Whether it's music or Win or whatever, but none of them did this disingenuous.
I'm creatively burnt out.
Yeah.
Grow up.
Yep.
We're all creatively burnt out right now. Here I am sitting in my house, and I'm creatively burnt out. You want to know why the podcast sucked for 3 months? That's why.
Well, yeah.
I was burnt out.
Do you know why we didn't release any for weeks? It's because we just were like,
burnt out.
It's burned out. But we didn't say to everybody, oh.
Yeah, we whined and complained about it.
I mean, it's just, we explained, hey, we got some stuff going on, and we didn't get them out. We didn't say, so let me set the stage for this. I'm going to put that back into the middle of the thing. So here's Rhett Shaw. This is what the video looked like. You can't see it, but I've got it up on my screen here.
Oh, you're going to show the drama?
Yeah. So here's the Rhett Shaw video. Now, the whole time it looks like this, guys. Notice that it looks like he's sitting in a room with the lights out and just the sunlight coming in. Like, oh, I can't even turn, I can't even turn on the lights or something. I don't know. And
there's like legit cinematography involved in this composition of this shot. Like, yeah. It's like, how do I make people more depressed about me?
Yeah, and he talks about his,
because I'm creatively depressed.
I'm so burned out, and in the video, whether he meant to or not, this is it's a broader problem, and I don't want to pick on Rhett, although Rhett is kind of like right now being the token of this. This whole thing is.
Yeah, this is really about a bigger issue.
Yeah, I'm privileged, and I grew up likely with helicopter parents, and I've got all this stuff. So I've got to be able to bitch about something. So I'm going to bitching about stuff, and it's like, Rhett, we have it good. Do you understand that? You, Rhett, probably got the $600 stimulus check, okay? Which is as good as anybody else got, okay? As much as you want to make fun of it, you probably got, you've definitely got all this stuff free from all these companies. Mary Spender took the exact opposite. Mary Spender went, I've got it good, and I want to share it with people. Who's the guy from Ohio with the long hair, skinny?
I forget his name offhand.
What's that?
I forget his name offhand, but I know you're talking about
Baker. Something Baker.
Yeah, Robert Baker.
Robert Baker. That's it. Robert Baker. I'm giving away a guitar. It's good. Life is good for me. I'm giving this away. Nobody even bought it. I bought it. I demoed it. I'm giving it away. Trogley. Hey guys, I'm doing such good. I'm doing so well. I want to make things good for people. I mean, I see this everywhere. All of these guys, and then I see Rhett Shaw, and I'm like,
yeah,
what?
You had the same reaction that I did. Was like, dude. So like, listen, I honestly, I have a lot of sympathy for somebody who's creatively burnt out. But if you're gonna put that problem over the front of like what's been going on to everyone else, you're a piece of trash, or you're so self-absorbed
Yeah.
that you can't understand what's really going on in this world right now.
Yeah,
Um,
Rhett, you got to read the room, brother. You got to read the
exactly
room.
what it is. He failed to read the room on that one.
You're
Um,
just like the governor of California going out and drinking with your buddies and having
yeah,
dinner while you tell everybody to stay at home. You're
right.
not reading the room.
Yeah, this is not okay. This is not acceptable.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, if you're a Brett Show follower and you really like him, let us know in the group what you think.
Well, just
I'm curious. I'm
yeah.
curious, but I'm just looking at this like as a whole nother piece of the pie. Like I have every sympathy for somebody who's burnt out,
Yep.
but I don't have every sympathy for somebody who makes a video about it and makes out like they feel that that's more important to them right now than
The video was 13 minutes and 23 seconds long. Let me stick this screenshot back in the middle of this. The video is 13 minutes. And I didn't get through half, folks. You can see where the red bar is on my I could not get through the whole thing. It was so dull. He had a voice like this, and it just kept going. And I thought to myself, man, come on, you've got to make this more interesting.
You need to hire a damn publicist because the publicist would tell him, don't do that.
Right, right. And that's where you should have shown it to your friends. I guess he's got a podcast with a friend now. They call it.
I'm sure he does. He's got to have every avenue he can to get him to flow him gear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
And anyway, he should have flown it by that guy and some friends. Maybe Beato. Beato probably would have told him, "Hey, man, I love you, but this ain't it. Don't do this. Don't do this."
I don't know. I mean,
go read your laundry list. That would be a better video. That would have.
I have a feeling him and Beato are like friends, sort of in a way, but I have a feeling that relationship is played up a lot more for their shows than it is real.
Yeah,
I have this feeling that it's like Beato has a show and I've worked with him before, and I have a show and my show's getting popular, so maybe we can bounce off each other.
right.
You know, like I have a feeling it was more mutual, like we know each other sort of thing, and now we're going to pretend to be great friends.
Yeah, I mean, to make it very short, he was Beato's what do you call it, coffee kid or whatever. The person that does work without being paid.
See, I don't know enough about Red Schull to even care.
He was his intern. Well, I only followed Beato, and Beato was saying that he was his intern. And then when Schull started doing the videos, he said, "You should do this," and showed him how to do it. And he got him kicked off. Was really where it went. But Beato's had several assistants and stuff since. I mean, Beato has a regular assistant. His you can tell his videos are polished because and that's because he's got a person over there getting him coffee and making sure everything's happening. That's what I needed. That was my son a minute ago who brought these in.
You go hire. We have the budget for that. I don't think we have the budget for that.
So, anyway, whatever. That's a dead horse. We've beaten it to death. So the next thing I want to talk about is another video I was watching. Kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about with the pedals. And so Beato and Pierce were talking this week, and it was a very interesting conversation. And one of the things that I'd forgotten about that we had kind of touched on before, but I don't think we really delved into was two things. And the first one I want to mention is that there are people. Why does the music scene suck so bad? Is what they were getting at. And the thing that both of them agreed on, and I couldn't help but agree as well, is that their music was better when this person made a statement that they quoted, when there was money on the other side of the E chord. In other words, if you had, and this is the thing that Tim asked Beato, which I thought was an interesting question. If there was no money in it, would you have recorded Stairway to Heaven? And I think that's very interesting in that I know Page was driven artistically. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that Page went in there, went going, what should I do to make more money? But I know he was super precise about his recording techniques because he knew that the resulting product was going to sell tickets, it was going to sell albums, think about the things that the lavish lifestyle that they had at that time. I mean, the drugs, the drinking, everything.
I'm going to paint a different picture of Page.
Sure.
I'm going to paint one that I don't think people are super familiar with. I want to paint a picture of Page as the rare book dealer, as the art school graduate.
Yep.
I think Jimmy Page gets beat up a lot for being good at business. And I think, honestly, I don't think a lot of his decisions were necessarily business motivated. I think, now maybe starting Led Zeppelin might have been, maybe doing some of the songs they did might have been, but his stuff in the studio, I think that was all ego stroking. I think he was not ego stroking, but this is how I paint. Okay. And I'm going to do it in a different way than everybody else. And that's going to be my sonic signature. And he was marketing himself is what he was doing.
I agree. I will take an analogy from the computer world. If I am a hacker and I decide I'm going to create a virus and I want to infect as many people as I can, am I going to infect Windows or Mac?
Actually, I would argue you'd be looking at mobile OSs, but
now, yeah. But what it used to be, the desktop.
Right. Yeah, but now obviously, if you're not, it's the Windows thing. If you're talking 10 years ago,
right. And so, if you want to be a famous hacker, and you want your ego stroked as a famous hacker, you were going to now. There's another side of it. There's the side of it that hey, I'm the one person that wrote a famous, and there was that one guy that wrote the thing that got into the Mac OS a few years ago. This was quite a few years ago now, but
there've been a lot of things that have targeted Mac over the years. That's the
but
whole
I'm
idea.
talking
There's
about
no
the big
malware
one,
over there. The whole idea that there's no malware over there is just BS.
No, it's the fact that there is malware over there, and we don't hear about it. It tells you how little people use it.
It's almost a third of the industry now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
growing.
it's getting to the point. The thing is, I think that I think they're just better about patching stuff, so it doesn't become as big an issue.
Right.
And since everything's online services now anyway, most of the attacks aren't focused on the OS anymore.
Right. So. And the 0-day stuff isn't as big because they've got a lot of stuff that goes on the other side. But you get my point. The analogy can't be perfect. It's got to be, it's as flawed as anything else.
I just don't see that the guitar playing, the guitar tone thing where he was picking microphones and putting it behind cabs and use these little super amps and all that stuff. I just don't see that was more that was him being trying to be more I guess have a wider voice that would reach more people. I think that was more, let's see what we can get away with kind of thing. And the spirit of rock and roll, and probably also emulating some of his heroes. And I get it. That could be looked at as the driving force behind a lot of it. Could also be something that also made him successful, but I just don't know that was necessarily the reason why.
I don't know.
But I get what
I'm
you're
using
saying.
Page as I think Pierce was doing the same thing. We're just using it as an example. We could have chosen a bazillion records. And,
out here, and going back to the original thing where him and Pierce were talking, and I feel like when you say that statement that money was better, it was better when money was on the other side of the E chord, it seems to me that they're equating quality music with some days of bygone. And I do get where they're saying oh yeah, there was a time period when music was more rich or whatever, but I think that's really just a personal preference thing for those guys. Because I think if you dig, you can still find good music out there. I do it all the time. mean,
Well,
that's
okay.
it's not
Let
easy.
me. All right.
That's the change.
Let me take another step. The next step of it. I've got 50,000. This is what I should have laid the groundwork for the conversation first. So they were talking about the fact that Spotify and SoundCloud and all these other things, these services where you're getting a bazillionth of a penny per play, now have all the power, and so the creation, the not the, necessarily the creation of the music, decent music wouldn't be there, but the push of the music um, that comes from stuff is going to be more uh, crowd fund driven than driven by
It's more
someone.
it's more listener driven than playlist driven.
Right, right.
And that is actually the argument I want to make here is that we can bitch about what Spotify is paying people, and yeah, it should change. Obviously, I think that should change, but that's like spilt milk at this point because
Oh
we've
yeah,
already given the power to the listener to
oh
actually
yeah.
decide what to listen
You're
to.
yeah.
We talk.
You're
I
not going
think
to
we
put
talked
the
about.
genie back in the bottle.
Well, I think I may have talked about this on the show. So a while back, Bonamassa has a podcast, right? And he did, or it's like a video podcast, and
Nerdville.
he did an interview with Brad Paisley,
Okay.
and it was an interesting interview. But anyway, one of the comments that came up was like, "Do you know why how classic rock radio picks the playlist they pick?" And he was saying like, well, you immediately think, "Oh, Clear Channels tell them what to play." And he said, actually, he's like, "There's a lot of independent radio stations, especially in that genre in the United States, still left, and they tend to be pretty popular. But the problem is they don't do any market research." Their idea of figuring out what their listeners want to listen to is to do a couple of radio surveys a year and ask them, "Hey, do you know this song?" Instead of
Right.
asking, "What would you like to hear?" they ask, "Do you know Stairway to Heaven?" It's like
Yeah.
it's just the wrong way of phrasing those questions.
Well, it's just like you've seen those Guitar World and Guitar One and Guitar Player and everybody else, those lists of the 10 best or the 50 best or the
Yeah,
100 best,
yeah. I
right?
saw I
Guess
saw 100 best horror
they,
movie list I about died
yeah.
on.
And
We
they
talked about it, I think.
yeah, and you've got to do the video because I lost all my files. But anyway,
Yeah.
so the uh the 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 implosion or the explosion, however you want to look at it. The thing about those, this is you'd always get all this. You didn't mention Larry Carlton, or you didn't mention this person, you didn't mention that person, you didn't mention, whatever musician, and you're thinking to yourself, 100. They couldn't find some people out of 100 that weren't like people they had already talked about, that nobody else cared about, truthfully. And you know what? You know what I found out when I finally went to go ahead and vote on one of those? Because I only voted on one, and I actually didn't even put in my vote. It was kind of like the vote I cast for the last presidential election. Um, it was the the um, the vote was like this. And it wasn't even like here's 1,000 people, choose from this 1,000. It was, for number one, here's a list. For number two, here's a list. For number three, here's a
Yeah.
list. And I went, are you fucking kidding me? This is how you choose your list? My number one isn't even in the choice for number one. You know?
Yeah. They've
And
already whittled it. They've already whittled it down. I mean,
yeah.
that's what's so stupid about it is those lists are always they're just a disaster anyway, but
But
um
it's marketed as a list of the
a
reader's
reader's choice,
choice,
yeah,
and it's not.
and it's not though. Well, they chose, but they didn't choose in a way that you think they did, which is how they played the game. I see. Here's the problem with doing something like that. If you're a publisher, right, and you're going to do a reader's choice of greatest guitar player, of current guitar player, right? Who do you think would be at number one right now, given the things that have happened in 2020? Who do you think would be number one?
Eddie Van
Because I
Halen.
can tell you, yeah, Eddie Van Halen will be number one, without a doubt, without a doubt. And if your Guitar Player magazine do you necessarily want Eddie Van Halen to show up on your player's choice? You want somebody modern who's still alive that you can get an interview with in the issue. I mean, that's the oh holy hell, like we can't do this kind of mentality. So they do have to manipulate people. Like they're gonna do it. You should
Yeah.
accept that. Part of my thing with like what they were talking about though is with money and money driving industry and money making good music or whatever. It's like I think good music is good music, right? And I think that there are definitely people that I've run into who make great music and they are not well known. And they are not in it for the money. Believe me, if they were in it for the money, they would have quit a while ago.
This is this is a conversation we had a while back. And
Yeah.
What I would say is this.
Go back and
I'm
listen to
not I'm not saying that the music doesn't exist or that that there is no good music or that no one is willing to create good music. What I'm saying is they're more the companies or entities that can put money behind marketing and getting global notoriety of good music are more worried about their brand and the brand of that musician. Let's look at that for a second and say they want it to be on orange drinks and Gatorade and
yeah, but that's like that goes back to the whole like the way that things were structured in the 80s where you had like the Michael Jackson pop thing where like he had a Pepsi sponsored tour and all that stuff. And the last person I know that had like a sponsorship like that, and I'm sure there's been others since, but was like Britney Spears, right? That was a thing for a while where the music companies were in bed with other companies to sell their product alongside their performer and like this whole like give and take trade thing, but that was limited to pop music. You were not going to find a rock and roll band riding a Pepsi tour bus. Okay, that just didn't happen. Because that was the marketing was always thrown at the ones that they figured these are the easiest ones for us to sell you. And these are the easiest ones to attach a product to. And that's why I'm like, yeah, okay, so Michael Jackson was like a rare freak, right? He's a great not great musician per se, but like a great performer, great singer. And he understood music very, very well. And he understood the business side of music pretty well. And who wouldn't? You were born into it. And so like he's a rare bird in that instance.
Yep.
But I can look at like tons of people that have been on those rosters, like Milli Vanilli and stuff, that the music was not good. Like it wasn't great. It was good enough to sell records in that time period, but it didn't age well. And that's what basically what I'm saying is like this thing exists. I'm sure it still does. I'm sure that Katy Perry has sponsorships like that. I'm sure there's products behind her that she promotes for, especially in the fashion industry and that kind of thing. But I don't think that kind of marketing motif is sustainable in today's business climate because of what they did when they destructured the industry. And what by they I mean Napster, and I mean Apple, and I mean all the other companies that got their hands in the streaming pot over the years, including Microsoft, among others. And I sort of like, everybody always says this is a dangerous thing, right? That people are not getting paid for their music and stuff. And like, yeah, it is a dangerous thing. Absolutely. But I think when I look at it, I also go, this gives both the consumer and the performer the opportunity to get in front of people that they never had before. And so it makes people who wouldn't necessarily have had a shot. Now, I'm not going to say Billie Eilish wouldn't have had a shot, but I would think that the record company probably would have passed on her. Like that would have been one of those situations where they would have looked at her and go, she's not really marketable. Like as much as she's talented, she's not marketable. And I've seen like the tabloids and stuff where, there's pictures of her or whatever, and there's like, they're just make her look awful and whatever. And it's like, you kind of take stop and take a step back and you go, it's because she's not, she's not the Katy Perry, right? She's not the Britney Spears. She never was gonna be. It was because
She is the Joe Bonamassa of the pop world.
she
She's
was an
gonna do whatever
audience
the fuck she wants.
She was an audience created thing. And the same thing with Joe Bonamassa. That's actually where I was headed with this. Is he's another performer who's selling out arenas, okay? And what is his shtick? He plays Led Zeppelin to blues, right? Like that's unheard of in 2020, 2019, 2021. Like that's just unheard of.
Yeah.
And I sit there and go, he did this by himself, but he really didn't do it by himself.
Yeah, but for every Bonamassa, and I'm not saying that this didn't happen in the past. Please don't think that I don't say that I think that for every Bonamassa and for every Billie Eilish, there's 1,000 others. And,
sure, no, there absolutely is.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. The thing I disagree with Pierce, and that conversation is, money will always follow popularity. The only reason that anybody is giving Eilish time of day is because her fans are rabid. They are rabid. I'm sorry. Her fans will go to the ends of the earth for her. And they do not. She can fart in their general direction and they will lap it up. Not because it's I'm not giving that as a bad thing. Don't get me. I'm not saying that's what she's doing.
Do you think it's because she's popular, or do you think it's because she's genuine?
Because she's genuine. They love her because she's genuine.
That's my point, though.
They love her. I'm talking about the people that give her. I should have rephrased that. The powerful people that give her the time of day are doing it because she's popular. The people who are making her popular do it because she's genuine. The same with Joe Bonamassa. That guy has put his foot in his mouth more times than anybody can count in the guitar world.
He's made a career of it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, every time he says something, he goes, somebody's going to take this out of context, but here I go. And recently, Lukather, he talked to Lukather because Luke took it badly. Luke was, you could tell that he is visibly upset about what happened when he said tablature was not reading music. That you should learn to read music if you want to read music. If you want to learn to play. But tablature is a crutch or something like that. I'll be the first person to admit tablature is a crutch. I've got a book right there. You can't see it because it's all whited out, but that's tablature. That's not sheet music. Are you kidding me? I know it's a crutch. It'd be ridiculous not to make that statement. But of course, all these people had their egos. Oh no, my ego is so badly bruised. I have to go after Lukather for telling me I'm using tablature as a crutch. Listen, it is a crutch. I'll be the first one to tell you, and I use it all day. I've got thousands of pages of it. That is all crutch.
Admittedly, what you're saying is absolutely true. That the reason the record company is interested in Billie Eilish is because of her popularity, and her popularity is because of her genuineness. I guess that would be the word I would use. And I think that those things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. I think that's how that relationship is supposed to work, right? Is that the artist should be connecting to the fans, not the music companies in front of the artists connecting to the fans. Because that's what was going on before. When Britney Spears signs a deal with Pepsi, right? Oh, actually, she's the perfect case. Because right now she can't do anything. She's stuck, and she's suing and trying to get out of her situation because they had basically declared her psychologically unfit. And so the record company literally got in between her and the fans, right? And this was going on her whole career, where she could never do anything without the record company say so.
Of course.
And there was no genuineness there, which is why, like, her fans still kind of stuck around when she shaved her head and went off the deep end, because they were like, well, this is what she's going through. And I mean, I don't, not that I like her music, but I identify with that part of it, that like they saw that as the reality behind what was really going on there, and that the record companies have been doing this for decades, where they create the ad campaign, they control who you're going to sign with, they control when you're going to record the next record, they do all of these things, and then you got somebody like Billie Eilish or Joe Bonamassa, who just comes out of left field and says, "Screw all of you. I'm doing it on my own time, on my own terms, with my own promoter." And of course, that's overstating Billie Eilish, right? Obviously, has a deal now. It's being taken care of by pop music and all that. But like Joe ran into a situation where he couldn't book the venues he wanted because nobody would give him the time of day. So he said, "Screw you guys." They laughed at him and they said, "You'll never do this." And he went and rented the venues himself, created his own promotion company, and has been selling them out for 10 years, 15 years or whatever it is now. And it's like the industry has to catch up at some point. And right now, what I'm seeing when I hear people like Tim Pierce talk about that is they're like crying for days gone by. And it's like, guys, you need to accept the new normal. Stop trying to pretend like it's going back that way.
Yeah. And I think that, so let's look back. If we are going to look back, let's look back, right? So if we were to look back at the people who did it for themselves, okay? The Beatles did it for themselves. They took it on and they toured around and made peanuts for a long time before they hit it big. And I could go on for a long time. The Beatles, the Bee Gees, the Who, Led Zeppelin, you name it. Led Zeppelin, as much as people want to think that the record company had something, no, that was a brainchild of themselves.
Yeah, I don't think record companies were that smart in 1971, 2, 3, 4
No.
to like do what Page was doing. I think he knew more about what the industry wanted than they did.
Right. And when you look at even the Birds and the Zombies and all these people, they were doing this stuff that was creative and was 10cc, another one that really was outside of everything. Pink Floyd, come on, nobody thought Pink Floyd would do anything. And they took a long time to actually take off. As much as
I have a really good relevant example to this.
Yeah.
You familiar with Rainbow Bridge?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the crazy psychedelic 60s movie.
Yep.
And I think it was actually 70. I think it came out in 1970, but which Jimi Hendrix is in. It has some of the best concert footage of Jimi Hendrix ever, but there's some issue. Yeah, there's some issues with the footage. But anyway, that's why it's relevant, right?
Yep.
And the director went to the producers, which, by the way, it's just show business. It's whether it's film or whether it's music, they both operate the same way. Went to the studio and he said, "I want to make this movie, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a bunch of people, and we're going to go rent a hotel, and we're going to put all these people in there, and then we're going to make a movie out of it, and it's going to be like a documentary thing."
Yep.
And the producer looked at them and said, "I have no idea what the hell you're going to do. Get him a check." That was the way they looked at that back then.
Yeah.
And they don't look at anything like that now. It's not like, get him a check. It's just like, no, we're not doing that. That's a risk of money. We don't risk. We don't take risks.
And as we said before, I think we talked about it last week or the week before. Hendrix didn't get popular in the States, folks. The States did not love Hendrix in the beginning. It was the UK. It was England.
He had a devoted group of people that would come out once he did the Monterey Pop. It was like, he was still underground. He didn't get super popular until his death. I mean, that when he died and that ended up on TV, then people started buying his records.
Oh yeah,
have an performance, okay?
Yeah, then everybody was like, "Oh yeah, I was a huge Hendrix fan." But I'm just saying that he got his start in England. Debbie Harry and Blondie got their start in England. Who was it? Chrissy Hind from the Pretenders. She got her start in England. The fact is that a lot of bands got their start. Heart got their start in Canada, not in America. They just happen to be heard because the radio waves don't know about borders and they come across. Um, so, geez, we talk about how diverse we are musically, and it's funny because we're not really. We're not. Japan is diverse musically. England is diverse musically. Germany is diverse musically.
No, I mean,
America isn't.
even the things that we claim, even the things that we lay claim to are like so interrelated,
Yeah.
like jazz and blues. I mean, there's a time period when that was basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And I sort of laugh because I'm like, that's what America. I use quotations because I know that obviously there's other forms of American music, but that's what American music is. You go to school and you study music, they tell you American music is jazz and blues. They don't talk about folk.
Right.
Because that's an Irish thing, apparently. That came from Ireland. Yeah, but jazz and blues didn't come from here either. Like,
Right.
they were born out of folk music. They were born out of French music.
Yep.
Like, I mean, it's like, guys, everything we do here is a melting pot.
Right.
You know, you go to England and they have pirate radio and they're playing stuff from, and I say pirate radio, but it's like just basically unofficial radio stations. And they'd be playing like, Jeff Beck talked about it. He did a whole album of music that was like inspired by basically like Middle Eastern rap music. And it's like, first off, Middle Eastern music is not something you actually hear as a term very much,
Yeah.
but there are some countries in the Middle East where music is a thing,
Yeah.
and not just used for celebration, but they have diversity. You're not going to hear, Indian. Was I gonna say like Indian film music on the radio here? You might hear K-pop now,
Right.
but that's the extent of world music in the United States that you're going to hear on the radio.
Yeah.
You would have to seek it out, and I think that's my whole thing with the streaming services is like people act like, well, streaming services are evil because they don't prop performers up. They don't do the things that performers want them to do, which is to put them in front of everybody. And it's like, well, but the streaming thing does something different. It provides the consumer the choice and the ability to look for things that are available on that service.
Well, we are in the infancy of it still. When you think about it, YouTube
20 years before we know what it's really going to look like.
Yeah, YouTube started in 2004, 2006, somewhere in there.
And we're just now getting to the crybabies.
Right, and really, YouTube has now surpassed television.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that happened.
I've watched more YouTube now than I do TV by a long shot. I don't have a cable service, folks.
Yep. The only reason I have cable is to watch YouTube. And it's funny because, I mean, in other words, cable internet.
Yeah, internet, right.
I don't have cable television. And I haven't for, let's see, what year is this? For 5 years. This will be my 6th year without cable television. And so 6 or 7. So a lot of people come up to me and they'll say, Jim, have you cut like the Kardashians? I know to make fun of them, but I don't really know what they are because I've never seen it. It didn't exist, and if it did, I knew that I didn't care. The Walking Dead, I didn't watch that. I don't watch television. And when my friends will say, "Oh, did you catch this or did you catch that?" I go, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Why are you even watching that?
I mean, so and it's funny because they don't know why a can of hard lemonade is funny, because they don't watch YouTube and we watch YouTube, so we know why a can of lemonade is funny. So
yes,
it's kind of like the news, and that's news. It's news as far as I'm concerned. Has changed, and it's developed a different way of delivering information. And we're only starting to see it. We're going to see it with movie theaters faster than we thought because of the pandemic. I don't think movie theaters are coming back at all.
I mean, even TV right now is breathing its last gasp. I know people are like that. People are probably listening to this and they're going, "No way!" Like, yeah, it's happening right as you're paying attention to it. If you haven't noticed, like CBS and all of the major networks really have their own streaming service right now.
Right.
that where they're
And-
releasing their content. The
That's
real
right.
good content is not coming to TV; it's going to the streaming service.
That's right. And
And
whether you like the content or not, the content that they like the best, that they're putting the money behind, such as Star Trek Discovery, um,
whether you
that's
like
not
it
on
or not,
television.
that's CBS's big show right now. And where
That's
is it?
right. That's right.
It's
It's on
over
CBS
there.
Plus or whatever it's called.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, wait,
Yeah.
all access. But
Is it?
but
Okay.
that's the point. Like so, I'm so glad that the music industry, and this is the distinction, that the music industry has chosen to not play favorites. And actually, when Tidal happened, I was pissed because I'm like, okay, so here's what's going to happen. They're going to desegregate the industry in the sense that you're going to have some people that have Tidal and iTunes,
Yeah.
and so, or Apple Music. Some people are going to have Tidal and Spotify, and that there will be like the need for this other streaming service because certain people want an exclusive place to be.
Yeah.
And
They
it's
can stay
like,
there.
yeah, but here's the thing, like that's bad for business for every artist.
Yeah.
If you're a person that listens to independent music and that's kind of like your thing is you seek out music that other people don't normally listen to. And because I'm sort of following that boat, right? Like I'll listen to that, and then if somebody comes on that's like maybe a little bit more popular, like a Joe Bonamassa, and I'm like, you know what? Actually, he's not bad. Like I'll listen to that too. And they lose that collateral, right? So that's what's happening right now with the TV services and the film services because they are not segregating their content into specific houses or anything like that.
Yep.
You don't really know what streaming services to get. And
Yeah.
so you have to get them all. If you want to
Well,
watch everything, then you have to get them all.
I
And it's
hope.
like,
Yeah, I hope that streamers like we do with our podcast. It is everywhere. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on
and you will find that
and
most musicians have embraced that approach.
right. And I think that's the smartest thing you can do. Um, if your objective is truly to reach as many people as possible, you're not gonna just stick it on YouTube and forget about it. There's a lot of there's a lot of reasons to diversify. There's a lot of reasons to get it out there in many different ways.
We're
And
multiple platforms where you'll find our podcast is listed on every podcast service we can find.
right,
And that's what's like this is not exactly the same thing because our product isn't free based.
right.
Only difference.
And that's the thing though, because it's like that. That I don't think we'd have as much. I think we'd have like one listener. I don't think we'd be like a cable access television show at 2 a.m. like Wayne's World. Wayne's World. Wayne's World.
Wait, we're not?
Yeah.
I quit then.
And yeah, exactly. And the truth of the matter is that if you look at it, that's kind of what we are. But because we exist in the world we exist in, if we just have, which you kind of do, if we just have one listener in each of these things, we have a group of listeners, which we have. And speaking of listeners, to shift gears, we have a listener question.
Yeah, let's get to that because we got a half hour left.
Yep.
And
So the
I
listener
feel like we should
question,
switch
yeah,
gears.
and I gotta finish up. So this is our listener question: Maple or Rosewood? Which one do you prefer? Why do you prefer it? And what is it that causes you to use one, the other, or both?
First off, I want to correct the question: Maple, Rosewood, or Ebony?
Yes,
Because
because I've got
there are actually 3 mainstream choices.
yeah, and I've got
even
some
though-
Ebony,
Yeah, is your 335 Rosewood or Ebony?
Rosewood.
Rosewood. What's your Ebony guitar?
I think my. Oh wait, I don't anymore. My V
I was
was
gonna say-
Ebony.
Yeah. Okay. So, I can start. I've had all 3 in Strat style guitars, and so like honestly, everybody, if you don't know, I'm a Maple guy. I tend to prefer Maple necks, and there's a couple of reasons for it, but we'll get into those in a minute. So, Maple actually probably tonally is the least fitting wood that I could probably put on my necks because it's extremely bright. I know people will tell you like wood doesn't matter in the fingerboard. I will say if you have a maple on maple board neck, they're bright. They just are. I have a Strat that I don't play, a Fender Strat that's maple on maple, and it's the biggest problem I have with it is it's got this peak around 2.5K that just doesn't stop and it just ramps up. Um, Now I could correct that with the right pickups. I could get another neck for it, obviously. And maybe a different piece of maple would be slightly darker in coloration, but like I think you roll the dice more on the bright side of the spectrum. If you go maple on maple, you can find the right one in any combination. But I think that maple on maple in general, if you're buying sight unseen, you're gonna get a bright neck. Just expect it. I will say they're more stable. That's part of the reason why I pick them. Um, the other reason I pick them is actually because of if you get them the way I like them, where they're almost unfinished or they're oiled, that is the way to play. For the kind of music I play, like there's no resistance. It's like, if you ever done gymnastics, it's like putting chalk on your hands. That's is kind of what it feels like. Um, and I don't have that experience with Rosewood. I've had Rosewood guitars. I actually don't dislike Rosewood. I think Rosewood's the best alternative to finished maple. I hate finished maple. If you're gonna put gloss finish on maple, just send it back. I don't want it. Because if you put a gloss finish on it for whatever reason, it's always a cheap gloss finish just to protect the maple, and it's like the stickiest, nastiest garbage on earth. I have a guitar right now I'm about to sell because it has a gloss maple neck, and I just don't want to strip it. I don't want to sand it down, so it's gonna go. But for Rosewood, I mean, it's kind of middle of the road. It's a little bit darker in tonality. It's not so like here's the strange thing. So people think like, well, is the wood gets darker, the tone gets darker. No, ebony is actually really bright. Ebony, I would say, is somewhere between rosewood and maple, and I think ebony tends to be like a lot brighter in the very very high spectrum of the guitar, not around the upper mids. Whereas like maple is the upper mids and it doesn't stop. Whereas like ebony is all clarity and top end and bright shimmery stuff. I like ebony too. Ebony's a good alternative for unfinished maple. Because it has similar characteristics. Both of those woods with smaller frets tend to be a little bit like sandpaper under the fingers, though. They're not as smooth because they're open grain. But that's basically where I live at with this question.
I am definitely, when it comes to my Stratocaster, I'm definitely a maple fan, and I've tried rosewood, and the reason that I like, and it's maple and maple, by the way, and that's a finished rose or maple fretboard. It is for the very reason you don't like it is why I like it, and that's because it's bright. And when I want to turn off the brightness, I roll back the tone knob just like everybody else. I'm not particularly independent of that or original by any means.
Well,
Uh,
I think the tone knob for me, like I've just never found the right values because it always sounds like a cocked wah when I do that, which is why I don't do it.
yeah, and I can understand that. I typically go to the neck pickup and I just roll it off a little bit, or I'll go between the bridge and the middle.
On a
Um,
Strat, the money position is the neck or the neck and middle anyway,
that's it.
so
Yeah,
that's that's normal.
it really is. I find myself using the bridge very little on a Strat, which
You
is
don't take it to
odd.
the bridge.
Don't take it to the bridge. Take it to the bridge. Um, Anybody that's a James Brown fan knows what we're talking about there.
I use my bridge pickup more than any Strat player I know. And honestly, like it's hilarious to me because I'm like, I like dark pickups. Why the hell am I using the bridge? But I if you have a good Strat bridge pickup, it changes everything. All of a sudden you're like, holy crap, you can actually use that pickup for
Yeah,
something. Yeah, that's what happens. So
yeah.
get a good bridge pickup.
I use my neck pickup and the neck middle. What's funny is because of that, and that's why I love that Strat. That's the one thing I do love about that Strat, other than the neck, which is an awesome neck, by the way, um, is that in the bridge position, I push in the S1, and guess what it does? it adds a neck. And so now I
Yeah.
have neck and bridge, and it mellows that sound out perfectly. And so
See,
I
that's
can,
weird because my S500 has that. I have the expander switch, and
yeah,
when I throw that thing, it sounds just like a telly, but it is not mellow. It is
yeah,
the opposite of mellow, and it makes me wonder if like your neck pickup is hotter
yeah, that's what I
than
think.
it should be in like a balanced set. I don't know. It's
Which is
just something
fine
I throw
because
out
it
there.
does exactly what I want it to do. You're probably right. It's probably exactly what you're talking about, where it mellows out the bridge and takes that spanky stuff off it and gives it a little more sponge. I
Well,
like it.
you've heard my treble position though, and like it's not what people would think, right? I mean,
Right?
it's not
No,
like because
no, it's
if you
not
ever played a strat,
ear-piercing.
and, yeah, if you played a strat and you play like a cowboy chord chord, and you're like, oh, I can't handle it. Um, None of my guitars sound that way anymore, and
So
I don't know if it's just technique or like what, but I can get away with it now, so
what's
I'm not
funny
mad.
is because I was doing some recording for this. I want to get together a little video of this for this. Is um, I did what you're talking about. So I played some open chords in my bridge only position. Oh, that's not so bad. And then I realized I was using the half watt setting on my 2x12 on the twin. So I put it to 12 watts, which is the second next. So two more things up. And then I turned it up a little bit, and there it is. There's that ear. And as I turned it up more in that and took off that um, what do they call it? The attenuator,
Mhm.
and put it towards where it would be at 85 watts. The closer I got to 85 watts, the more I got that high end, and the louder I made it.
Mhm.
So the fact is that folks, you got to remember what you might like at the bedroom levels might not be what you like when you're playing out, and that's a big thing. So for me, which one do I prefer? It really depends. I mean, if I'm playing comfortably numb and I'm doing that really high bend, at the 14th fret, um, that where the solo is in D, the first solo, I kind of want to make it shoot you right in the eye. Where the second solo is a little bit more, um, you know,
I think you're
open.
describing the property of beaming, though, right?
Yeah.
Like a very directional speaker,
Yep.
and not having a diffused tone. One
Yep.
thing that I found that actually will help with that is turn on a reverb. Turn your
Yeah.
reverb up, because what happens is it diffuses that
Yep.
across the frequency spectrum and makes it more even, and it can take a piercing sound and make it palatable. But the other thing is with Fender amps, that tone control, people have them dialed way too high most of the time.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many 60 style Fenders like blackface amps where I see people with their treble on like 8, and I'm going, what are you trying to do? Communicate with bees?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I, what I wind up doing, it's on 4 actually. It might even be on 3. I'm trying to see over there. Yeah, it's on 4. What I will do is I'll kick in the Keeley dark side, the front
yeah.
side of the dark side,
Oh well, and
and
then and depending on where your toenails on that, I mean,
then
because
I
that's basically a muff.
yeah.
I mean,
It,
I got, in fact, I don't think I showed it on the show this last week. I got the Plumbus fuzz, and this is my wife's silly gift for me this year. This is a Russian big muff in a Plumbus housing from Rick and Morty, and this guy, like, these are the knobs, which if you haven't figured that's the controls, like the Plumbus.
yep.
Um, so
I
I
love Rick
found
and
that
Morty.
the tone control, it like if I put it lower than you probably would ever consider putting it, I really like the sound of a muff.
Yep.
But most people want to put the tone control at noon or higher, and I'm going, oh
No.
God, that's just gonna rip your head off.
Yeah.
Like, what are you
No.
doing? So
Yeah.
my two
But
cents. But back to wood.
yeah, back to wood. So the truth of the matter is, obviously, I have 3 rosewood fretboards, and I had an ebony fretboard. Um, I prefer the rosewood. And even then, you'll see me when I use the bridge pickup. Doesn't matter which three of these guitars, I may roll my tone knob just a slight bit too. It's ever so slight. You know, the difference between 10 and 9, even if it's just a hair, can really make the difference in how it projects and whether it sounds sharp uh, and kind of has a more, you know what I mean, a more, for lack of a better word, rolled off sound.
Well, I think a lot of people associate that the razor blade thing, like the hair or whatever you want to call that, the fizz that happens in an amp with, you know, a type of wood or whatever. And I honestly don't think that those frequencies are really the responsibility of the wood. Actually, in my estimation, when I have a fizzy guitar tone, you know what it usually is? My amp is quiet,
Yep.
turned way down, and the speakers don't. They reproduce those frequencies a lot more accurately than they do the other stuff. And so you turn them up, those eclipse that, and all of a sudden that disappears in the mix, and everything is right as rain.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I've gone back and forth on vintage 30s. I still don't like vintage 30s at volume. I'm not gonna get in the middle of that, but I will say that they sound better louder because it evens out that thing, right?
Yep.
Now, so you were talking about Rosewood. So you have Rosewood. Would you say that Rosewood is a snappy wood, or is it more mellow? Like
I find it.
yeah, attack wise.
Oh, attack wise, I actually find it to be snappier.
Well, so like I actually find maple to be snappier, but
Do you?
this is we're talking about fretboards, right?
Yeah.
So I actually got to play a Rosewood neck, PRS. Right?
Nice.
It was a special order. Somebody had it in the shop and they let me play it. And that was the snappiest neck I've ever played. I was like taken aback. I was like, damn. And it wasn't like mahogany. So like all of these woods change a little bit with mahogany. And that's another thing I was going to point out. I've never played a mahogany maple board.
Yeah.
I'm sure they exist. I know people have ordered them
I
before.
have. Yeah.
But like no, like mahogany neck maple board. I've seen maple neck's mahogany board.
Yep.
But it's like that's like a different thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say that like in general with mahogany rosewood, the only problem I have with them, it's not tonal. They actually sound great. That is the sound of Gibson, right? What I have the problem with is that they are less stable. Because rosewood tends to, and it's a hard wood, but it tends to flex more because it doesn't have the backing of the mahogany, which is a softer wood that, you know, that maple would provide. Like maple is a freaking hard wood. And I know that we probably talked about this on the show before, but you can go find pictures of Leo Fender standing on a Telecaster neck between two chairs. And apparently when they used to do that exhibition, he'd stand on the thing and then he'd put it on a guitar. You know, it's like, and it works, you know, and it's not out of tune or anything. Like, so granted, Leo Fender is probably 90 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting little story. I don't think you will see any Gibson owners standing on their mahogany necks between two chairs. No, it probably wouldn't be a good look for them. Mark Agnesi, would you care to take the Pepsi challenge?
Yeah. You know, so yeah, let me go back to that snappiness. What I mean by snappy might not be what you're talking about by snappy. What I'm talking about by snappy, and then it might be. So here's what I get from a Strat, and it might be, I don't know what causes it, but what I get from a Strat, and of course I love maple fretboards on Tellys and Strats, but obviously Strats more because I don't play Telly. But I get an instant this, and then a lot more of this. It comes
like
down
a shorter decay.
Yep.
Like a smoother decay. That's the pickups.
Yep. And where in a Les Paul, I get a this. It's like this. I can get that
Oh,
consistency.
you're talking about smoother, so less snap there. So in a
Yep.
Rosewood Les Paul, you're not gonna get it. So like just comparing just like Rosewood Strat versus Maple Strat, generally you're gonna have a like a sharper attack in a Maple Strat. It's
Yep.
not gonna be a lot, and it always depends on the pickups because that's a big problem. Like if you got plugged in, you can hear it acoustically more than you can otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think personally, um, Maple Rosewood is probably still going to be snappier than Mahogany Rosewood. But what you're going to get on Mahogany Rosewood, generally, in my opinion, based on the ones that I've played, is a louder guitar.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but it seems like the guitars I play with Mahogany Rosewood, they just tend to be louder. I don't know if it's because they're attached to brick bodies, which could be part of it. When you got a Les Paul, gonna be freaking loud. It's gonna be freaking loud. Is my assumption because the body's not absorbing as much vibration. It's just passing it along.
Right.
That's my hypothesis. I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about acoustic vibration in surfaces and things like that. But,
Yeah.
and then of course these all radically change. These characteristics again dynamically and radically change when you get into semi hollows. So you got a 335 back there, and that's
Yeah.
that's going to be the smoothest attack.
Yep.
And like the most mellow attack, it's just going to be like a hump instead of like a,
Yeah, that's what I meant by the two solid bodies get where they're going and they stay there. And so
right.
it's almost like a square wave. I mean, it's not, but that's how it feels. Where the Stratocaster feels like a sine wave, an
Yeah,
instant
it's
sine
it's
wave.
very much like it decays quickly, but then it like has a long release.
Right. And they all have, a lot of people say, oh, Stratocaster doesn't have any, uh, the length of the note. What the heck is it? The
Sustain.
sustain. Thank you. The Stratocaster don't have. They have sustain. It's just not the same sustain. You're not
If you
sustaining the same frequencies.
Here's a weird thing, and I'd love to test it sometime. So maybe if I get a chance, maybe a listener can help me out with this test at some point. But what I want to do is I want to make some Strat pickups that are really high output, or get some, because I know they exist. Like you can get Bare Knuckles makes a set that's like 18K or something. It's supposed to be really freaking loud. And I want to compare them against humbuckers of similar volume, like audible volume, right? And then I want to do a test of sustain, because what I have always surmised and what I've always thought was the truth was that Strats are probably actually louder guitars because of the bolts in the neck. That's a really good mechanical. And I suspect that the reason that they're not as loud to people and they seem like the sustain drops off is because the initial attack is louder than being single coils. They're snappier, right? But also because the pickups are only like 6K and they're generally pretty low output. They're generally lower than even your low output PAFs, or even the lowest ones are probably similar, right?
Yep.
And if it's really about output, like how much volume they put out, like that's what I want to test, because I have a theory that the Strat is probably actually a louder guitar, but it's just because it's limited by the electronics. It gets kind of this weird rap of being inferior because it's not as loud. Well, first off, loudness doesn't really mean a whole lot. I mean, actually, the guitar isn't supposed to have infinite sustain. We've made it that way over time, but it's supposed to be like any other plucked instrument. Think of a harp. It's not supposed to, like, the note is not supposed to hang there in the air forever.
You go and have a bite and you come back and it's still going.
Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. That's not supposed to happen. Like it's supposed to be. Honestly, it's supposed to be like a palm mute thing. You pick it and the note goes away.
Yeah, and it can actually make for a pain in the rump. Like if you've got too much sustain, you could actually wind up where you have more note than you wanted from your guitar. And I'm sure you've had that in the past.
It's easy to control, and that's like I think for a lot of people, if you're recording and you want the last note to ring out and you want it to decay quite quickly, that's okay, yeah, I get it. Because you can do it with a fade, but it's not the same. And but like I think for a lot of people, I would rather have too much and have the sustain I want, which is
Right.
depends on my playing characteristics are like. I wouldn't expect Vernon Reed to want infinite sustain because he tends to play a lot of like staccato lines with a lot of notes really fast. And he actually sets his guitars to action so you can hear him buzzing. So that's like a whole other thing too. And I think that's partially because he wants it to deaden the note a little bit. And it must be hell on his frets, but that's a thing, and people do that thing, right? So that's
of course.
ultimately, I think these choices. I think we can tell you what we think of Maple, Rosewood, and Ebony. You only asked about Maple, Rosewood, and the choices between them. I think that's totally personal preference. Personally, for me, I wouldn't let it stop me buying a guitar. I would pick up a guitar, and if I like the way it played, I'd play it for a while. I'd plug it into an amp, and if I like the way it played to the amp, then that would be adequate for me. Whether it had a Rosewood or Maple neck is sort of irrelevant. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be that. There's this one guy on YouTube that does all these stupid reviews, and he's like, well, Rosewood is superior, and, sonically superior, but Maple looks better. You're full of crap. Like, if you think that one is superior to the other, you haven't been playing guitar long enough to realize that there's a situation for everything. So I don't know. I mean, would I give up any of my Maple guitars? Would I swap them out for Rosewood? I got one that I'd swap for Rosewood in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Two, and another one that might actually get Rosewood just because. And it's just
Which one would you swap out for Rosewood?
the G&L Legacy, the red one I have.
Oh, okay.
Because I hate the gloss maple neck on it, and I do not want to. It doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense for me to keep it.
It's got a finished maple neck on the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, the Ultra is not that. I meant that it's got the fretboard. That's got the maple, the standard maple, like a finish.
Right. No, this is maple with finish on top. Right.
Yeah.
And those kind of necks suck. My G&L is not that way. It's got a satin finish on it.
Yeah,
satin finish I can do. I prefer like basically raw wood though. I would be much happier with raw wood than satin.
You know what I found out is, and you probably
satin.
know why already, but I prefer a nitro finish or a satin finish to any gloss neck. It's just nitro. Your hands move.
You know what?
Nitro.
You know what? And like, I can second that. I think that there's polyurethane finishes I can jive with too.
Yeah.
I really think that it comes down to the quality of the finish and dry time and how they want to apply and all that. And I think that a lot of times that the finishes are applied like cheaply or they're applied very thick. And the one on that G&L is like a cheaper end. That's the only problem I have with the tributes that they're putting out now is that they have a cheap polyurethane gloss on the neck. And it's fine if you're gonna sand it down. I mean, I didn't buy that guitar to sand it down. I'll sell it to somebody who will play it the way it is.
Right.
And I will go get what I want, which is something a little bit more suitable to my needs.
So before we go, I'll just say one thing that's kind of a factual thing.
I wanted to say one more thing. Hail Satin.
Hail Satin. Hail Satin.
Hail Satin. That may be the title
sure.
of the episode.
I love Satin. Hail Satin. I was looking up the specs on my SG, so I could say for definitively that the fretboard was Rosewood because the other two specifically say Rosewood. I went to look that one up on the Gibson site. I had to go to a sales site, Guitar Center. I went to because guess who removed this SG standard from their website? Gibson. The SG, it's still on the website, the SG 60s, but the SG standard is not on their website right now. I get the feeling there's a change coming. I know that they're supposed to do some stuff for, but that's a weird one to change.
Makes me wonder if they're going back to, I just Googled it and I came up with it.
On Gibson's site?
Yeah. It's Gibson's page.
Well, if you go to
let me
Gibson's
see if I can find it
site,
in their original collection.
Yeah, in the original collection. Look for the SG standard. Not the SG Standard 61, just the SG Standard.
Yeah, I mean that may be an oversight on their part too, but I would
It used to
suspect
be
that they've
there.
got a new model coming. Well, you know what's funny is the one that I'm showing as the standard SG right now has the Batwing, the big guard, and they didn't before. They had the small one, and the list price on this is $1,500, which kind of leads me to believe that this is going to be the replacement for that.
Well, this
That
one is
because
so this is the $1,500 Batman wing thing.
right,
So what I'm wondering is, are they going to leave the SG Standard 60s and not do this one anymore?
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't think that if they did that, it's probably because the sales on the regular standard SG are not good. And from my inclination, I think most people are wanting that 60s one, the 61 or whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard people say like, yeah, I'm getting a 61 standard SG more than I've heard, standard SG.
Yeah.
So, and that is Rosewood on this one. This
Yep.
was documented, but I don't think they're pulling a Martin on anybody and using whatever the hell wood choice they want to
Yeah.
use.
Like Rich Light.
Yeah, that's definitely not Rich Light. I can tell from looking at it from here that's not Rich Light, but
Yeah, mine's not Rich Light. I can tell you from a close up. I could take a picture of a close up, and you could see.
I was really surprised that your 335 darkened up as much as it did with oil, because I saw freshly oiled necks at a store in Michigan, and they were light.
Yeah.
And I was going, where are they getting this Rosewood from, or is it Jatoba or something like that?
Right.
So
yeah, this guy you can see he darkened right up. He sucked that stuff up though. That I used
the other ones looked wet, and they looked like they were wet, and they were very light for Rosewood. I was like, are these legit? So
yeah, that's what I was afraid of when I took it home. I said, "Geez." But the problem is that I don't know about the store you went to. Guitar Center had them hanging on the top, all the way up.
Oh,
now of course they're
so the SG. By the way, the SG Standard is listed in the Modern Collection.
Oh,
not
really?
The original collection. Yes.
Oh, that's why.
Why do they even have collections? Like, no one cares about that. Outside of Gibson dealers, no one cares about that.
I'm not sure why they. So I get the idea. There's no 2020, 2021, 2022 supposedly SG anymore. You've got an SG Standard.
I get it. It's like the Players Series, Professional Series thing. I get it. But like when you go to buy an SG Standard, do you care if it's modern or original?
No.
It's like, do I want original or extra crispy? Like,
yeah, it's kind of weird. I am surprised that it was there. I didn't even look in the Modern Collection, to be honest with you. So that was my bad.
I'm just saying that the Gibson doesn't have like price points the same way that Fender does, and it's all made in the USA, and
I wouldn't call a tribute modern. And it's not like the 490R and 490T are modern pickups.
Oh, I don't know about that. Those are pretty hot.
They've been around for a while, though.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, based on age, no, but they're hotter than you would find in a vintage Gibson for sure.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I'm probably going to throw 57 Classics in mine, but that's beside the point. I keep saying that, but every time I play it, I'm like, I like it the way it is.
I wouldn't mess with it. I honestly wouldn't mess with it. If it's got Gibson pickups in it, you don't need to invest money in 57 Classics. People, listen, people. I'm gonna tell you a secret. Gibson pickups are not that great. Okay, I know people are gonna like send me hate mail. When you've had a set of good pickups that emulate Gibson pickups, stock 490, 498T, if you can get along with them, fine. But I can tell you that they're like buying Gibsons is not really the replacement angle you want to go on. You would be much better off going to somebody like Bare Knuckle, which I think Bare Knuckle's expensive, or going to like, a Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. He is a sponsor of the show, so I will say his name. Go to Nick Bonger's, order yourself a set of real PAFs, and you will see the difference. And Jim, you did the Pepsi Challenge, so you know, like they're not the 57 Classics are they're expensive for what they are, and the only credibility you get is, oh, I got Gibsons in my Gibson.
Yep. Yeah. And if you're going to do the biggest thing is no matter what you do to a Gibson, or a Fender, by the way, is when it comes to trade time,
Put the
you've
original pickups back in.
devalued it. Yeah, you better put the original pickups back up, and you better do a good job of soldering it, or you've devalued it. Because
If somebody opens the cavity, honestly, if they're going to go that far with it, I just tell them to go pound sand.
Yeah.
Gibsons are desirable. Nobody cares about that. Go take it to your tech and spend $5 having to go over the solder joints.
Yeah. Yep.
You buy here. I'm gonna buy your Gibson SG Standard 61 that you paid $1,700 for, and I'm gonna buy it from you for $1,300. Oh my God, that solder joint looks bad. We can't do this deal over $15.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It is kind of a silly thing when you look at it that
It's
way.
beyond silly. Like, oh, I'm not gonna buy your guitar because it doesn't have a hard shell case. It's a $5,000 guitar. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Like over a $50 or $100 case?
Yep.
My cat is chasing a bottle cap.
Yep. Well, it's been 2 hours.
It's time to go.
I've been Jim.
I've been David. Hail
We've been-
Satin.
Hail Satin. We've been Practical Guitarists.
Hail Satin.
Hail Satin.